Michael Patterson's hand froze on the Mercedes steering wheel, his daughter's voice cutting through the December rain like broken glass. "Daddy, why is that angel crying music?" The windshield wipers stopped mid-arc as he stared at the figure hunched beneath the dim streetlight outside Neiman Marcus. A young woman in a tattered coat, her violin bow drawing haunting melodies from strings that should have snapped in this weather. This wasn't a street performer. This was a requiem. Emma pressed her small palm against the passenger window, her breath fogging the glass. "She's playing Mommy's song." The child's whisper struck him like lightning. It was Moonlight Sonata, Anna's favorite piece. The same melody that once filled their home before cancer stole his wife's voice forever. The woman collapsed. Her violin case sprang open, revealing the engraved nameplate. Victoria Chen, 1967-2019. Michael's blood turned to ice. Victoria Chen, Anna's college roommate, the woman who'd vanished from their wedding photos, the friend Anna spoke of in fevered whispers during those final hospital nights. "Call 911 now," he barked into his phone. Who was this broken angel playing his dead wife's song in the rain? Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. The ambulance sirens faded into Austin's pre-dawn silence as Michael paced the emergency room's sterile corridors, Emma clutching his hand like a lifeline. The woman, Sarah, according to her hospital bracelet, had refused charity, demanded to leave, then collapsed again when the triage nurse mentioned calling social services. Now she lay sedated behind curtain 3, her violin case sitting on the bedside table like a sacred relic. "Daddy, is the angel sick?" Emma whispered, her 7-year-old eyes wide with the kind of concern that broke hearts. Michael knelt beside his daughter, smoothing her blonde hair so much like Anna's it sometimes stopped him cold. "She's just tired, sweetheart. Very, very tired." But tired didn't explain the needle tracks between Sarah's toes, carefully hidden from casual observers. It didn't explain why a woman carrying a violin worth more than most people's houses was digging through restaurant dumpsters on Christmas Eve. And it certainly didn't explain why she'd been playing Anna's song with the kind of raw emotion that suggested intimate familiarity. Dr. Martinez emerged from behind the curtain, chart in hand, expression grim. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, and what appears to be chronic PTSD. She's been living rough for months, maybe longer. He glanced at Emma, then lowered his voice. "Mr. Patterson, this woman needs psychiatric evaluation. She keeps asking for someone named Victoria, says she has to tell her the music worked." Michael's breath caught. Victoria Chen, the name on the violin case, the woman Anna had searched for during those final weeks, desperate to reconnect before time ran out. Anna's deathbed words echoed in his memory. "Find Victoria's daughter, Michael. Promise me. She'll need family when I'm gone. Can we see her?" The words tumbled out before Michael could stop them. "She's sedated, but please." Emma's small voice carried the weight of 3 years without a mother. "I want to tell her thank you for the pretty music." Against protocol, Dr. Martinez nodded. They approached Sarah's bed quietly. Even unconscious, pain etched lines around her eyes, her hands curled protectively around something unseen. Emma reached into her pocket and placed her beloved stuffed rabbit, Mr. Buttons, beside Sarah's pillow. "Angels need friends too," she whispered solemnly. Sarah's eyes fluttered open, focusing with effort on the child beside her bed. You're the little girl from the car." Her voice was hoarse, broken. "I'm sorry if my music scared you." "It didn't scare me," Emma said, climbing onto the chair beside the bed with the fearlessness of childhood. "It sounded like Mommy singing. She used to sing that song when I couldn't sleep." Sarah's face went white. "Your mother. She knew that song? She knew all the songs, Emma said sadly. But she went to heaven 3 years ago. Now Daddy can't remember the music anymore. Sarah's eyes found Michael's across the bed, and in that moment, something shifted, a recognition deeper than sight, older than words. The universe had aligned in ways that defied explanation, bringing together broken pieces of the same shattered song. Sarah discharged herself against medical advice at dawn, clutching her violin case like armor against the world's judgment. Michael found her in the hospital parking lot, sitting on a concrete barrier, staring at the sunrise with hollow eyes that had seen too much. "You don't have to do this alone," he said, approaching slowly, as if she were a wounded animal that might bolt. "Yes, I do." Her voice carried the weight of someone who had learned that depending on others led only to disappointment. "I've been doing it alone for 18 months. I'm good at it now." Emma appeared beside him, having slipped away from Grandma Rose in the waiting room. She held out a paper bag. "It's Christmas breakfast. Grandma Rose made biscuits with honey butter. She says hungry people need love food." Sarah's composure cracked. A tear escaped before she could stop it. "I can't. I don't deserve—" "Deserve's got nothing to do with it," came a warm voice behind them. Grandma Rose Patterson approached with the measured steps of someone whose 78 years had taught her when to push and when to wait. She studied Sarah's face with the intensity of someone solving a puzzle. "Child, you look just like someone I used to know." Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the bag. The scent of fresh biscuits made her stomach clench with hunger she'd been denying for days. "I knew a Victoria Chen once," she whispered. "She used to make biscuits like these." The paper bag fell from Grandma Rose's hands. "Sweet Lord in heaven." She sat down heavily on the barrier beside Sarah, her face pale. "Victoria Chen Williams. She was Anna's roommate at UT. Anna talked about her right up until—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Michael's world tilted. "Sarah Chen Williams? I was Sarah Chen until Victoria adopted me when I was 5. She saved me from foster care, gave me her name, her love, her music." Sarah's voice broke. "She died 2 years ago. Cancer, just like your wife. I held her hand while she played our favorite song on repeat, Moonlight Sonata. She said it was a prayer her best friend had taught her back when they were young and thought they'd live forever." The silence stretched between them, thick with implications none of them were ready to voice. Emma, with the devastating directness of childhood, broke it first. "Were you Mommy's friend too?" "I never met your mother," Sarah said softly. "But Victoria loved her. She had a picture of Anna on her piano, your wedding picture. She used to tell me stories about the girl who taught her that music could heal anything." She looked up at Michael. "She tried to call Anna when she got sick, but the number had changed. She died thinking her best friend had forgotten her." Grandma Rose pulled a tissue from her purse, dabbing at eyes that had seen too many goodbyes. "Anna tried to find Victoria too, especially at the end. She made me promise." She looked at Michael meaningfully. "She made me promise to find Victoria's daughter if anything ever happened. Said that girl would need family." "I don't need family," Sarah said quickly, standing up. "I need to go." "Where?" Emma asked with heartbreaking simplicity. "Where do angels go when they're sad?" Sarah knelt to Emma's level, touching the child's cheek gently. "Angels go wherever they won't hurt the people they love." "But you're not hurting us," Emma protested. "You're fixing the music. Last night was the first time Daddy didn't cry during Mommy's song." Michael felt his chest tighten. Had he been that transparent? Had his 7-year-old daughter been watching him grieve, cataloging his tears, measuring his healing? "Emma's right," he said. "Come home with us just for Christmas." "Anna would have wanted—" He swallowed hard. Anna would have wanted us to take care of Victoria's daughter. You don't understand, Sarah said, desperation creeping into her voice. I destroy everything I touch. I had a career, a future, people who believed in me. It's all gone. I'm poison. Honey, Grandma Rose said, struggling to her feet, poison doesn't make music that beautiful. Poison doesn't make children feel safe. Whatever happened to you, whatever lies they told, it doesn't change what I see right now. A young woman who plays like an angel and loves like her heart's breaking. Emma slipped her small hand into Sarah's. Please come home with us. Mr. Buttons wants to show you his tea party set. And Daddy has a piano, but nobody plays it anymore. It's very lonely. Sarah looked down at the child's trusting face, then up at Michael's hopeful eyes, then at Grandma Rose's knowing smile. 3 strangers offering what she'd thought was extinct in her world. Unconditional acceptance. Just for Christmas, she whispered. Just for Christmas, Michael agreed, though they both knew they were lying. The Patterson mansion sat like a fortress of glass and stone against the Austin hills, its warm lights cutting through the Christmas morning mist. Sarah hesitated at the threshold, her violin case heavy in her hands, watching Emma bounce excitedly from room to room like a pinball of pure joy. This is the music room, Emma announced, throwing open French doors to reveal a baby grand piano covered in a thin layer of dust. Mommy used to play here, but Daddy locked it after she went to heaven. I unlocked it yesterday with Grandma Rose's bobby pin. Michael's jaw tightened. Emma, we talked about this. But angels need pianos, Emma protested. How else can they practice? Sarah approached the instrument reverently, running her fingers across the keys without pressing them. The piano was a Steinway, easily worth $200,000, but money wasn't what made her hands shake. Sheet music still sat on the stand, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major with handwritten notes in the margins. Anna's handwriting. She was working on this when she got sick, Michael said quietly. Never finished learning it. Sarah's fingers found the keys, playing the opening measures with haunting precision. The notes filled the room like sunlight after storm, and she watched Michael's face transform from grief to something approaching peace. How do you know that piece? Grandma Rose asked from the doorway, her voice strange. Victoria taught it to me. She said her college roommate had started learning it but never got the chance to finish. Victoria learned it for her, as a way of keeping her close. Sarah's fingers stilled. She never told me the roommate's name. The silence that followed was broken by the doorbell's chime. Michael frowned. They weren't expecting anyone. Through the front windows they could see a black sedan with tinted windows and a man in an expensive suit standing on their doorstep with a briefcase. Daddy, who's that? Emma asked, suddenly hiding behind Sarah's legs. Michael opened the door to find a tall man with silver hair and cold eyes. Mr. Patterson, I'm Dr. Jonathan Whitmore from the University of Texas Music Department. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She recognized that voice, the voice that had destroyed her career, her reputation, her life. Behind her, the piano bench scraped against the floor as she stood up too quickly. Jonathan, she whispered. Doctor. Whitmore smiled, but it was the kind of smile that belonged on a shark. Hello, Sarah, or should I say, Sarah Chen Williams. I see you've upgraded your living situation significantly. You know this man? Michael asked, stepping protectively closer to Sarah. Dr. Whitmore was my professor at UT, Sarah said, her voice barely audible. He's the one who accused me of plagiarism. Accused? Jonathan laughed, a sound like breaking glass. My dear girl, I proved it. The Austin American-Statesman still has the article on file. Prodigy's plagiarism scandal rocks music department. Quite the sensation it caused. Emma pressed closer to Sarah, sensing the adult's tension even if she didn't understand it. Grandma Rose moved to stand beside them, creating a protective circle around the child. "What do you want?" Michael's voice carried the kind of authority that came from running boardrooms and crushing competitors. "Justice," Jonathan said simply. Sarah stole compositions from younger students, claimed them as her own work, and when caught, played the victim so convincingly that some people actually believed her lies. He opened his briefcase, pulling out a thick manila folder. "I have documentation proving her academic fraud, newspaper clippings detailing her disgrace, and witness statements from her former classmates." "That's not true," Sarah said, finding her voice. "You know that's not true." "What I know," Jonathan said, his eyes glittering with malice, "is that you've now moved on to bigger prey. A grieving widower with a fortune and a vulnerable child. The pattern is obvious." Michael stepped forward, his face dangerous. "I think you should leave." "Oh, I will. But first, Mr. Patterson, you should know exactly who you've invited into your home." Jonathan pulled out a newspaper clipping, holding it up like evidence in a trial. "This is what the Austin music community thinks of your house guest. This is what potential business partners will think when they see you've associated yourself with a known fraud and manipulator." Emma looked up at Sarah with confusion and worry. "What's fraud mean?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. She couldn't bear the thought of this innocent child learning about cruelty and betrayal from watching her own destruction play out in real time. "It means some grown-ups tell lies about other grown-ups," Grandma Rose said firmly, fixing Jonathan with a stare that could have frozen hell. "But some of us are old enough and wise enough to know the difference between lies and truth." Jonathan's smile faltered slightly. "Mrs. Patterson, with respect, you don't know what you're dealing with." "I know exactly what I'm dealing with," Rose replied, her southern accent thickening with anger. "A man so small and bitter that he builds himself up by tearing others down. We had a name for your kind back in my day, yellow dogs. Too cowardly to fight fair, so they bite from behind." Sarah felt something break inside her chest. These people barely knew her, yet they were defending her against someone who had spent years perfecting her destruction. "This isn't over," Jonathan said, closing his briefcase with a sharp snap. "Mr. Patterson, when your business partners see the photos of you harboring a known criminal, don't say I didn't warn you." As his footsteps faded down the driveway, Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Are you really a criminal?" Sarah knelt down, looking into the child's trusting eyes, and realized she was standing at the edge of either salvation or complete destruction. "No, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, cupping Emma's face in her trembling hands. "I'm not a criminal, but some people think I am, and that makes me dangerous to be around." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire, acrid and inescapable. Michael watched Sarah's shoulders curve inward, watched her shrink back into the broken woman he'd found in the rain. Jonathan Whitmore's poison was already working. "Dangerous how?" Emma asked with the relentless logic of childhood. "Because when people believe lies about someone, those lies can hurt the people who care about that someone," Sarah explained, her voice barely audible. Grandma Rose made a sound like steam escaping from a kettle. "Horse shit," she declared, causing Emma to giggle despite the tension. "Pardon my French, baby girl, but some things require strong language." Over the next 3 weeks, Sarah became part of their daily rhythm in ways that felt both natural and miraculous. She woke early to make Emma's breakfast, braiding the little girl's hair with the patience of someone who understood that children needed consistency more than perfection. She helped with homework at the kitchen table, turning math problems into musical patterns that made Emma laugh instead of cry. Most evenings, after Emma was asleep, Sarah and Michael found themselves in the music room. She would play violin while he nursed a scotch and tried to remember what peace felt like. They talked about loss, his sudden and cruel, hers slow and systematic. They talked about Emma's night terrors, how the child would wake screaming for her mother, and how Sarah's gentle humming could calm her when nothing else worked. "She's getting attached to you," Michael said one evening in late January, watching Sarah tune her violin. "I know." Sarah's fingers adjusted the pegs with mechanical precision. "I should leave before it gets worse." "What if I don't want you to leave?" The question hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they could cross. Sarah set down her violin, meeting his eyes for the first time all evening. "Michael, you don't know what you're saying. Jonathan wasn't bluffing about the business implications. I looked up your company online. TechVision has contracts with universities, education departments, conservative corporate boards. They won't want to be associated with someone who's been branded as a fraud and a manipulator. Let me worry about my business. I can't let you destroy your life for me. Emma needs security. She needs a father who can provide for her, not one who's been professionally ruined by association with damaged goods." Michael stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, Austin's skyline glittered like scattered diamonds, a testament to ambition and success he'd spent 20 years building. "You're not damaged goods," he said finally. "You're the first thing that's felt real since Anna died." The confession escaped before he could stop it, raw and unfiltered. Sarah's breath caught, and when he turned around she was crying. "Don't," she whispered. "Please, don't say things like that." "Why not? It's true. Because it makes leaving impossible and staying will ruin you." He crossed the room in 3 strides, cupping her face in his hands the way she'd cupped Emma's. "What if I'm already ruined? What if I've been sleepwalking through life for 3 years and you're the only thing that's woken me up?" When he kissed her, it tasted like salt tears and redemption. Sarah kissed him back with the desperation of someone drowning who'd suddenly found shore. They broke apart, foreheads touching, breathing hard. "This is a mistake," she whispered against his lips. "Probably," he agreed, then kissed her again. Their relationship deepened through February like roots growing in fertile soil. Sarah moved into the guest room officially, though she spent most nights on the couch in Emma's room, chasing away monsters and singing lullabies in 3 languages. She taught Emma piano with the kind of structured patience that spoke of formal training, and Michael watched his daughter bloom under the attention. "Sarah's better than my old teacher," Emma announced one evening at dinner. "She doesn't yell when I mess up." "Good teachers understand that mistakes are part of learning," Sarah replied, cutting Emma's chicken into perfect bite-sized pieces. "Did your teacher yell at you?" Emma asked with 7-year-old directness. Sarah's knife paused against the plate. "Some of them did, yes." "That's mean. If I was your teacher, I would give you gold stars every day." Grandma Rose reached over and patted Sarah's hand. "Some people break things because they're broken inside. But some people fix things because they remember what it felt like to be broken." That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah told Michael about her childhood, about being abandoned at a fire station when she was 3, about foster homes where music was considered a waste of time, about Victoria Chen finding her at age 5 and seeing potential instead of problems. "Victoria saved me," Sarah said, curled against Michael's chest on the living room sofa. "She taught me that music wasn't just noise, it was language, emotion, prayer, story, all wrapped into something invisible but more real than anything you could touch." "What happened with Jonathan?" Michael asked gently. "The real story." Sarah was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "He was my advisor senior year, brilliant musician, respected teacher, and completely obsessed with perfection. He saw potential in me, but also competition. I was getting offers from major orchestras, full scholarships to graduate programs he'd been rejected from 30 years earlier." She shifted against him, seeking comfort. "The plagiarism accusation came out of nowhere. He claimed I'd stolen compositions from younger students, said he had recordings of them playing their original pieces before I submitted them as my work. The evidence was overwhelming: timestamps, witnesses, documentation. But it was fabricated, masterfully fabricated. Jonathan had been planning it for months, maybe years. He knew exactly how to make it look authentic, and more importantly, he knew exactly how to make me look guilty even when I was telling the truth. Michael's arms tightened around her. "What did you lose?" "Everything. My scholarship was revoked, my orchestral contracts canceled, my reputation destroyed. The story made national music publications. Prodigy's plagiarism scandal. It's still the first thing that comes up when you Google my name." "And Victoria?" "Victoria believed me, but she was already sick by then. The stress of defending me, fighting the university, watching me fall apart, it accelerated her decline. She died thinking she'd failed to protect me." Michael understood now why Sarah woke up at 3:17 a.m. every night, why she sometimes stopped mid-conversation and stared at nothing, why she flinched when people raised their voices. She wasn't just homeless. She was haunted. But he also understood something else. He was falling in love with her, and it was the kind of love that felt like destiny rather than choice. The first paparazzi photo appeared on a Tuesday in early March. Michael was coming out of Emma's school after a parent-teacher conference, Sarah beside him, Emma between them holding both their hands. The photographer caught them laughing at something Emma had said, looking for all the world like a complete family. By Wednesday, the photo was everywhere. "Tech Mogul's Homeless Romance," screamed the Austin Business Journal headline. The story was predictably salacious. Mysterious woman appears in Michael Patterson's life, moves into his mansion within days, clearly targeting his fortune and his vulnerable daughter. By Friday, Michael's phone was ringing non-stop. Board members, investors, major clients, all expressing concerns about his judgment and the company's reputation. "Michael, you know we respect your personal life," said board chairman Robert Caldwell during an emergency meeting. "But TechVision's success depends on trust. Our clients are conservative institutions, universities, government agencies, family-oriented corporations. This kind of publicity is based on lies and invasion of privacy," Michael replied coldly. "Perhaps, but perception becomes reality in our business. We need you to consider how this relationship might impact our Q2 earnings, our upcoming merger discussions, our what? Our basic human decency?" The room fell silent. Michael looked around the conference table at men and women he'd considered friends, people who'd celebrated Anna's life and mourned her death alongside him. "I'm taking a leave of absence," he announced, "until you decide whether TechVision is a company that values character or just the appearance of it." He walked out before anyone could respond, but he heard Robert's voice carrying down the hallway. "Get me everything you can find on this Sarah Chen Williams. If we're going to save this company, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with." That evening, Sarah was waiting for him in the music room, her violin case packed, her few belongings in a duffel bag by the door. "I saw the news," she said without preamble. "I'm leaving." "Like hell you are. Michael, your board of directors just held an emergency meeting about me. Your stock price dropped 12% today. I won't be responsible for destroying everything you've built." Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, eyes wide with the intuitive fear that children develop when their world starts shifting. "Are you leaving again?" she asked Sarah in a small voice. Sarah knelt down, pulling Emma into a hug that looked like goodbye. Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices to protect the people they love. "But I love you," Emma said simply. "Doesn't that matter?" The question hung in the air like a prayer, and Michael realized they were standing at the edge of either salvation or complete destruction, and the choice wasn't entirely theirs to make. Sarah's packed duffel bag sat by the front door like a death sentence, but Emma's question hung in the air with the weight of absolute truth. Sometimes, children possessed a clarity that adults lost somewhere between disappointment and cynicism, and Emma's simple declaration, "I love you, doesn't that matter?" cut through every rational argument Sarah had constructed. "Of course it matters," Sarah whispered, holding the child tighter. "It matters more than anything." "Then stay," Emma said, as if love were the only logic that counted. "Please stay." Michael watched this exchange from the doorway, his heart breaking and rebuilding itself with every breath. 3 hours ago, he'd walked out of his own boardroom, effectively putting his life's work on the line for a woman he'd known for barely 2 months. It should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like the first honest decision he'd made since Anna died. His phone buzzed with another text from Robert Caldwell. "Reconsider. Company's future depends on it." Michael deleted it without reading the rest. "I'm not letting you leave," he told Sarah. "Not because of them, not because of him, not because of anyone." "Michael, be reasonable." "Reasonable went out the window the night I found you playing Anna's song in the rain," he interrupted. "This isn't reasonable. It's necessary." Grandma Rose appeared in the hallway, moving with the deliberate steps of someone who'd made a decision. She carried a small wooden box, its surface polished smooth by decades of handling. "Emma, baby, go brush your teeth. The grown-ups need to have a talk." When Emma reluctantly disappeared upstairs, Rose set the box on the coffee table and opened it with reverent care. Inside, nestled in faded blue velvet, lay a collection of letters tied with a yellow ribbon, photographs, and what appeared to be a small cassette tape. "Anna left these for me to give to Victoria's daughter when the time was right," Rose said quietly. "I've been carrying this secret for 3 years, waiting for God to show me when and how." Sarah stared at the box as if it contained explosives. "I don't understand." Rose pulled out one of the photographs. 2 young women in graduation caps and gowns, arms around each other, laughing at something beyond the camera's reach. One was clearly Anna, her blonde hair catching sunlight. The other was Asian American, beautiful, with kind eyes and a violin case slung over her shoulder. "Victoria Chen, 1995, University of Texas Music Program." Rose handed the photo to Sarah. "Anna talked about her every day those last few months. She'd made me promise to track down Victoria's adopted daughter, said that girl would need family when her mama passed." Michael moved closer, studying the photograph. "Anna knew Victoria had a daughter?" "She knew everything," Rose said, pulling out another photo, this one showing Anna and Victoria at a piano, sheet music scattered around them. "They wrote to each other for years after college. Victoria sent pictures, updates, stories about raising a musical prodigy who could make angels weep. Anna kept every letter." Sarah's hands shook as she touched the photo. "Victoria never told me she'd kept in contact with anyone from college." "Probably trying to protect you," Rose said gently. "Victoria wrote about the troubles you were having, the accusations, the way they destroyed your reputation. Anna was sick by then, but she wanted to help. She asked me to set aside money, establish a trust fund, find some way to support you without you knowing where it came from." The room fell silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock and Sarah's uneven breathing. Rose continued, "Anna made a recording for you right before she passed. She was too weak to write by then, but she had things she needed to say." She held up the small cassette tape. "I've been waiting 3 years for the right moment to play this." Sarah looked at Michael, then back at Rose, then at the tape that seemed to pulse with possibility and danger in equal measure. "Play it," Michael said when Sarah couldn't find her voice. Rose inserted the tape into an old player she'd brought from her room. Static filled the air for a moment, then Anna's voice emerged, weak but determined, carrying the distinct cadence of someone who knew time was running out. Victoria, my dearest friend, if you're hearing this, it means both of us are gone, and Sarah is alone in the world. I'm so sorry I couldn't reach you before you left us. I tried calling, but the numbers had changed and I was too proud to try harder. I regret that pride every day. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Michael moved behind her chair, placing his hands on her shoulders for support. Anna's voice continued, punctuated by pauses where she gathered strength. I want Sarah to know that Victoria talked about her constantly. Every letter, every phone call, every Christmas card. Victoria's whole world revolved around the daughter she chose to love. She was so proud of your talent, your dedication, your beautiful heart. The recording crackled with static, then cleared again. Sarah, sweetheart, I know we never met, but I've known about you for years. Victoria showed me videos of your recitals, sent pictures of your achievements, bragged about your acceptance to the symphony program. When she wrote about the terrible things that man did to you, how he stole your reputation and your future, it broke my heart. Tears were streaming down Sarah's face now. Michael's grip on her shoulders tightened. I want you to know that none of it was your fault. Predators like him choose their victims carefully. Talented people who threaten their fragile egos, people who have more natural ability than they'll ever possess. He destroyed you because you were everything he wanted to be and never could be. Sarah sobbed openly now, years of internalized shame and self-doubt cracking open like a dam. Anna's voice grew stronger, as if summoning her final reserves. Michael, if you're listening to this, it means God has brought you and Sarah together, the way He brought Victoria and me together all those years ago. Take care of her, honey. She's been carrying Victoria's love and mine, even when she didn't know it. Emma needs her. I can feel it, even from here. Some people are meant to be family, even when blood doesn't make them so. The recording fell silent for a long moment. Then Anna's voice returned one last time, barely a whisper. Sarah, play our song for them. Play Moonlight Sonata. And remember that music never dies. It just waits for the right heart to bring it back to life. You are Victoria's greatest composition, and now you're part of ours. Welcome home, sweetheart. Welcome home. The tape clicked off, leaving the three of them sitting in profound silence. Sarah was shaking so hard she could barely stay upright. Michael knelt beside her chair, pulling her into his arms as she collapsed against him. She knew, Sarah whispered through her tears. Anna knew about me all along. She was waiting for you, Rose said softly. We all were. We just didn't know it. Emma's voice drifted down from upstairs. Are you coming to tuck me in? Sarah looked up at Michael through her tears, seeing her own wonder reflected in his eyes. Whatever forces had brought them together, chance, fate, Anna's lingering love, or simple human need, had created something neither of them could walk away from. I should go tell Emma she doesn't need to worry about me leaving, Sarah said, wiping her face. We should tell her, Michael corrected. We should tell her together. As they walked upstairs hand in hand, Sarah carrying Anna's letters, and Michael carrying the weight of a decision that would change everything, neither of them noticed the dark sedan parked across the street or the telephoto lens capturing their every move. Jonathan Whitmore was patient, methodical, and absolutely determined to finish what he'd started. If Sarah thought she could escape her past by hiding behind a millionaire's protection, she was about to learn how wrong she was. The war for Sarah's future was about to begin in earnest. The first death threat arrived on a Tuesday morning in April, slipped under the front door like a poisonous love letter. Emma found it while collecting the newspaper for Grandma Rose, her small fingers tracing the block letters that spelled out words no child should ever read. Whores and gold diggers deserve to die. Sarah found Emma in the kitchen, holding the paper with the careful concentration of someone trying to decode adult cruelty. What's a whore? Emma asked with devastating innocence. Sarah's coffee mug slipped from her hands, shattering against the marble floor in a symphony of ceramic and despair. She knelt beside Emma, gently taking the letter while her heart hammered against her ribs. "It's a word that mean people use to hurt women," Sarah said carefully. "It doesn't mean anything true about me, but it tells us something true about them." Michael appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas, drawn by the sound of breaking glass. When he saw the letter in Sarah's trembling hands, his face went white, then red, then dangerous. "Pack your bags," he said quietly. "All of you. We're leaving Austin." "Michael, no! This isn't negotiable anymore." His voice carried the kind of authority that had built empires and crushed competitors. "Someone knows where we live, knows Emma's schedule, knows enough to target a 7-year-old child. We're done playing defense." But running proved impossible when the enemy had already infiltrated their defenses. That afternoon, as Michael worked from his home office coordinating their departure, his assistant called with news that made his blood freeze. "Sir, the Caldwell Foundation just pulled their $12 million contract. They cited moral concerns about leadership integrity. And sir, the Austin Business Journal is running a front-page story tomorrow. They have photos." Michael's hand tightened on the phone. "What kind of photos?" "You and Miss Chen Williams?" "Intimate photos. Someone's been watching your house for weeks." The photos, when they appeared, were artfully cropped and captioned to tell the worst possible story. Sarah playing violin on the back deck became Mistress Serenade's sugar daddy. Emma hugging Sarah in the garden became child manipulation tactics exposed. Even Grandma Rose wasn't safe. A photo of her and Sarah talking on the front porch was labeled "Elderly Victim of Elaborate Con." By evening, their story had gone national. Cable news picked it up, social media exploded with opinions, and Sarah's name began trending alongside hashtags like #GoldDiggerGate and #HomelessScam. The worst part wasn't the lies, it was how quickly people believed them. Michael's phone rang constantly with concerned friends and colleagues who'd suddenly remembered red flags they'd noticed about Sarah. Board members who'd smiled at her over dinner now spoke of her as if she were a disease that had infected their golden boy. "This has to stop," Sarah said that night, standing in the music room where they'd fallen in love, surrounded by boxes packed for a departure that now felt like retreat rather than strategy. "It will stop," Michael replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "When people see the truth, they don't want to see the truth." Sarah's composure finally cracked, 3 months of accumulated poison erupting like a broken dam. "They want to see exactly what Jonathan's giving them. A story that confirms every ugly assumption they've ever made about women like me." Emma appeared in the doorway, clutching Mr. Buttons with the desperate grip of someone whose world was disintegrating. "Why are people saying mean things about us on TV?" Neither adult had an answer that would make sense to a child. How do you explain to someone who still believes in fairness that the world often rewards cruelty and punishes kindness? How do you tell a 7-year-old that some people hate love when they see it because it reminds them of everything they've lost? The breaking point came at 3:17 a.m., Sarah's traditional waking time, when she found Emma standing by the living room window in her pajamas, watching cars drive slowly past their house. "Are they coming to hurt us?" Emma whispered. Sarah knelt beside her, following the child's gaze to the street where strangers sat in parked cars, some with cameras, others just watching. Their home had become a zoo exhibit, their private pain transformed into public entertainment. "No one's going to hurt you," Sarah promised, though she wasn't sure she believed it anymore. "What about you? Are they going to hurt you?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a house fire, acrid and inescapable. Sarah realized with crystal clarity that staying meant watching this innocent child learn about hatred, betrayal, and the way the world could turn love into a weapon against itself. Emma, do you remember what I told you about angels? Emma nodded solemnly. Sometimes angels have to go away so the people they love can be safe and happy. It doesn't mean the angel stops loving them, it just means love sometimes looks like letting go. No. Emma's voice was small but fierce. Angels don't leave. Bad people leave. Angels stay and fight the monsters. From upstairs came the sound of Grandma Rose calling out in her sleep, the confused murmurs of someone whose heart was giving out under the weight of stress and sorrow. The doctors had warned that emotional trauma could be fatal for someone with her condition, but none of them had listened. They'd been too busy fighting for their right to love each other to notice that the battle was killing the most vulnerable among them. Sarah found Michael in his study, staring at his laptop screen with the hollow eyes of someone watching his life's work crumble in real time. His company's stock had dropped 40%. 3 major clients had terminated their contracts. The merger he'd spent 2 years negotiating had been indefinitely postponed. "How bad?" she asked quietly. "Bad." He closed the laptop, rubbing his eyes. "But not irreparable. If we can weather this storm—" "There is no weathering this storm, Michael. Don't you see? Jonathan isn't going to stop. He spent years perfecting my destruction, and now he's found a way to destroy you, too. Every day I stay. Every day Emma sees her father attacked because of me. Every day Rose's heart weakens under this stress. I'm killing the people I love." "You're not—" "I am." Her voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. "I'm toxic, Michael. Everything I touch turns to poison. Victoria died defending me. Now I'm going to watch the same thing happen to your family." She walked to the window, looking out at the reporters camped on their lawn like vultures waiting for something to die. "I have to leave tonight, before this gets any worse. Sarah, promise me you'll take care of Emma. Promise me you'll tell her every day that I loved her, that leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done, and that sometimes love means making choices that break your heart." When she turned around, Michael was standing behind her, and in his eyes she saw her own grief reflected back at her. The terrible recognition that sometimes love wasn't enough to overcome the cruelty of the world. "Don't ask me to let you go," he whispered. "I'm not asking," she replied, her heart breaking with every word. "I'm telling you goodbye." Sarah left at dawn on a Thursday morning when the world was still gray and quiet, carrying nothing but her violin case and a broken heart. She slipped out through the garden gate while Michael slept fitfully upstairs, and Emma dreamed of angels who promised never to leave. The reporters had gone home hours earlier, their cameras finally silent, unaware they were missing the very story they'd been hunting. By the time Michael found her goodbye letter propped against the coffee maker, written on the back of Emma's drawing of their family, the one where Sarah had wings, she was already 3 states away, riding a Greyhound bus toward nowhere with tears freezing on her cheeks. The letter was brief, devastating in its simplicity. "Love isn't always enough to overcome the damage some people carry. Take care of our girl. Tell her I'll love her until the stars stop shining." Michael's roar of anguish woke Emma, who came running downstairs in her pajamas to find her father on his knees in the kitchen, clutching a piece of paper like it contained his own death sentence. "Where's Sarah?" Emma asked, though her 7-year-old intuition already knew the answer. "She's gone, sweetheart." "Forever?" Michael couldn't answer. The word forever felt too absolute, too final, too much like admitting defeat. Instead, he pulled his daughter into his arms and held her while she sobbed for the second mother she'd lost. While outside their house the morning sun rose on a world that suddenly felt colder and emptier than it had any right to be. The months that followed blurred together like a nightmare Michael couldn't wake from. Emma stopped speaking entirely except to ask when Sarah was coming home, a question that grew less frequent but more desperate with each passing week. Grandma Rose's health declined rapidly, her weak heart unable to process the guilt and grief of watching her family disintegrate. "I should have done something different," Rose whispered to Michael during one of her increasingly frequent hospital stays. "Should have played that tape sooner, should have fought harder, should have protected her better." "You did everything right, Rose, we all did. Sometimes the world just wins." But Michael didn't believe his own words. Late at night, when insomnia held him hostage, he researched private investigators, hired security firms, spent small fortunes trying to find traces of Sarah's passage through the world. She'd vanished as completely as smoke, leaving behind only echoes of violin music and the lingering scent of jasmine perfume in Emma's room. His business empire, built over 2 decades of 18-hour days and calculated risks, crumbled with shocking speed. The board of directors voted him out in May, citing gross negligence of fiduciary responsibility and damage to corporate reputation. Robert Caldwell delivered the news with the satisfied smile of someone who'd been proven right. "Nothing personal, Michael. Just business. You chose her over the company, and companies don't survive that kind of sentiment. Go to hell, Robert." Already there, my friend. Already there. By autumn, Michael had lost everything except what mattered most, Emma and Rose. They moved to a modest house in South Austin, far from the mansion that had become a monument to broken dreams. Emma started 2nd grade at a public school where nobody knew their story, where she was just another quiet kid who sometimes forgot to smile. The first breakthrough came on Thanksgiving Day, when Emma found Michael crying over Sarah's violin music, playing softly from his phone. "Daddy, are you sad because you miss Sarah?" Michael looked up to find his daughter watching him with the solemn wisdom of someone far too young to understand loss, but old enough to recognize it. "Yes, baby. I miss her very much." "Me too. But Grandma Rose says missing someone means you love them real, and loving real is always good, even when it hurts." Emma climbed into his lap, small arms circling his neck. "Maybe Sarah is like Mommy now. Maybe she had to go be an angel so she could watch over us from far away." "Maybe, sweetheart. Maybe." That night, for the first time in 8 months, Emma asked if she could play piano again. Her small fingers found the keys of their old upright piano, the only instrument they'd kept when they sold the mansion, and picked out the opening notes of Moonlight Sonata. "I want to play Sarah's song so she knows we still love her," Emma said. Michael sat beside her on the piano bench, guiding her hands through the melody Anna had started learning, that Sarah had finished, that now belonged to all of them. As Emma played, he sang the words Sarah used to hum, wordless sounds that somehow conveyed everything language couldn't. The music filled their small house with something that felt almost like hope. Meanwhile, 2,000 miles away in a women's shelter in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Sarah woke from another nightmare at exactly 3:17 a.m. But this time, instead of lying in the dark fighting memories, she reached for the violin case she'd never stopped carrying and played the same song Emma was learning. She'd been living anonymously for 8 months, working at a community center, teaching music to refugee children, existing on the edges of society where her face wouldn't be recognized and her past couldn't follow. The work paid almost nothing, but it fed her soul in ways she'd forgotten were possible. The children she taught didn't care about her scandal or her shame. They cared only that she could show them how to make beautiful sounds with instruments that had been donated, broken, and lovingly repaired. She taught a 10-year-old from Guatemala to play "Mary Had a Little Lamb" on a violin held together with electrical tape. She helped twin brothers from Honduras learn to harmonize their voices in a way that made the other children weep with joy. "Miss Sarah," asked Maria, a 6-year-old whose family had fled violence in El Salvador. "Why do you look sad when you play the pretty songs?" "Because music carries memories, mija. And some memories are happy and sad at the same time. Like when I remember my abuela who went to heaven?" Exactly like that. What Sarah didn't know was that someone had been filming her sessions with the children, posting videos on social media that were slowly, quietly going viral. A young volunteer named David had been documenting the community center's work, and his videos of Sarah teaching music to refugee kids had begun attracting attention from people who recognized something transcendent when they saw it. The video that changed everything was filmed in early November, when Sarah played Ave Maria for a Christmas concert rehearsal. 30 children surrounded her, some humming along in languages she didn't speak, others just listening with the rapt attention of souls recognizing home. The video was titled "Mystery Angel Teaches Music to Refugee Children," and within 2 weeks it had been viewed 50 million times. Comments poured in from around the world, people demanding to know who this woman was, where they could donate to her program, how they could help support her work. But most importantly, the video was seen by a private investigator in Austin, Texas, who had been searching for Sarah Chen Williams for 8 months and finally had a lead that might bring a broken family back together. Michael's phone rang on December 15th, exactly 1 year after the night he'd first heard Sarah play violin in the rain. "Mr. Patterson, this is Detective James Rodriguez. I think I've found her." Michael's hands shook as he pulled up the video on his laptop, watching the woman he'd never stopped loving teach children to believe in beauty despite everything the world had stolen from them. She looked thinner, older, marked by months of grief and guilt. But when she played violin, when she smiled at those children, when she helped a small boy tune his donated guitar, she looked like the angel Emma had always insisted she was. "Where is she?" Michael whispered. "Albuquerque. She's been working at a refugee center. But Mr. Patterson, there's something else you need to know. The video is going viral, which means she's going to run again the moment she realizes people are looking for her." "Exactly. If you want to find her, you need to move fast." Michael looked at the calendar. December 23rd. Almost exactly 1 year since Sarah had collapsed in the rain outside that shopping center, since Emma had asked why angels cry music, since his world had been turned upside down by love he'd never expected to find. "Book me a flight to Albuquerque," he told Rodriguez. "Tonight. What about your daughter?" Michael looked toward the stairs where Emma was sleeping, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd once given to Sarah, dreaming whatever dreams 7-year-olds dream when their hearts are healing from losses too large for their small bodies to contain. "Emma's coming with me," he said. "We're bringing our angel home for Christmas." The Centro Comunitario Esperanza sat like a beacon in Albuquerque's International District, its adobe walls warm against the December cold, windows glowing yellow with the promise of sanctuary. Michael stood across the street with Emma's small hand in his, watching children's silhouettes move behind frosted glass, listening to the faint sound of violin music drifting through the evening air. "Is that her?" Emma whispered, pressing against his leg for warmth and courage. "I think so, sweetheart." They'd flown in that morning, Michael's heart hammering against his ribs for 6 straight hours, while Emma asked endless questions about angels and whether they were allowed to come back from heaven if people missed them enough. Now, standing here in the fading light with snow beginning to dust the sidewalks, Michael felt the weight of an entire year's worth of grief and hope balanced on the edge of whatever happened next. Through the window he could see her, Sarah, thinner than he remembered, her blonde hair longer and pulled back in a simple braid, wearing jeans and a donated sweater that had seen better decades. She was kneeling beside a small boy, guiding his fingers along the neck of a battered guitar, her face illuminated by the kind of patient love that had first made Michael fall for her. "She looks different," Emma observed with the brutal honesty of childhood. "How so?" "Sadder. But also more like an angel." Michael understood what his daughter meant. There was something almost ethereal about Sarah now, as if suffering had refined her into something purer, more essential. She moved through the room like music itself, touching shoulders, adjusting instruments, smiling at children who probably couldn't pronounce her name but trusted her completely. "What if she doesn't want to see us?" Emma asked, the question that had haunted Michael's thoughts for the entire flight. "Then we'll tell her we love her anyway, and we'll keep loving her whether she comes home or stays here. But I want her to come home." "I know, baby. So do I." Michael pushed open the community center's front door, setting off a small bell that announced their arrival. The violin music stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of children chattering in Spanish and English and languages he couldn't identify. Sarah's voice rose above the chaos, gentle but authoritative. "Cinco minutos más, niños. 5 more minutes, then we put the instruments away." They followed the sound of her voice down a narrow hallway decorated with children's artwork. Crayon drawings of families, houses, trees, and hope rendered in primary colors. At the end of the hall, an open doorway revealed a large room filled with mismatched chairs, music stands held together with duct tape, and 30 children ranging in age from 5 to 15. Sarah stood with her back to the door, conducting a ragged but enthusiastic rendition of "Silent Night," played on instruments that should have been retired decades ago. Her violin sat in its case nearby, and Michael noticed with a pang that she'd taped Emma's drawing to the inside lid, the family portrait where Sarah had wings. Emma saw it at the same moment he did. She let go of Michael's hand and ran into the room, her small voice cutting through the music like crystal. "Sarah, you kept my picture." The violin bow slipped from Sarah's fingers, clattering to the floor in the sudden silence. She turned slowly, as if afraid that moving too quickly might shatter whatever miracle had brought them here. When her eyes found Emma, then Michael, her face went through a series of expressions too complex for words: shock, joy, terror, and something that looked almost like relief. "Emma?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "We came to bring you home," Emma announced with the matter-of-fact confidence of someone who'd never doubted this moment would arrive. "Daddy says Christmas isn't Christmas without family, and you're our family now." The children in the room had gone completely quiet, sensing something momentous happening even if they didn't understand the language or the context. Sarah knelt down as Emma ran to her, catching the child in a hug that looked like it might never end. "I missed you," Emma whispered against Sarah's neck. "I missed you so much it made my chest hurt." "I missed you too, mi amor, every single day." Michael watched from the doorway, afraid to move closer, afraid to break whatever spell had made this reunion possible. Sarah looked up at him over Emma's shoulder, her eyes swimming with tears. "How did you find me?" "You went viral," he said, managing a smile. 50 million people have watched you teaching these kids. Someone called you a mystery angel musician." Sarah laughed, a sound caught between joy and panic. "That means I need to leave again. If the video's everywhere, then Jonathan's in prison," Michael interrupted. "Has been for 6 months." Sarah went still. "What?" "Fraud, identity theft, stalking, harassment. It turns out destroying your career was just the beginning. He'd been doing the same thing to other people for years, students, colleagues, anyone who threatened his fragile ego. The FBI finally caught up with him." One of the children, a girl about Emma's age with dark braids and solemn eyes, approached cautiously. "Señora Sarah, ¿está bien? Are you okay?" Sarah wiped her tears, switching effortlessly to Spanish. "Sí, mija. Estoy bien. Estos son mi familia, my family. They came to visit. The girl studied Michael and Emma with the wariness of someone who'd learned not to trust easily. ¿Van a llevarte lejos? Are they taking you away? The question hung in the air like smoke. Sarah looked around the room at 30 children who'd found stability in her presence, who'd learned to believe in beauty again through her patient teaching. Leaving them felt like betrayal. Staying felt like choosing martyrdom over love. I don't know, she said honestly. An older woman emerged from an office at the back of the room, Maria Santos, the center's director, according to the nameplate on her desk. She was 60-something, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that had seen enough suffering to recognize healing when it appeared. "You must be Michael," she said, extending her hand. "Sarah has told us about you. About all of you." "She has?" "Every day for 8 months. Emma would love this song. Michael would understand this child's struggle. Rose would know exactly what to say here. You've been with her this whole time, even when you weren't." Sarah stood slowly, still holding Emma's hand. "Maria, You don't owe us an explanation, mija. We always knew you were healing here, not hiding. The question is, what comes next?" Before Sarah could answer, the children began to understand what was happening. A boy named Diego, who'd learned to play Happy Birthday on a keyboard with missing keys, tugged on Sarah's sweater. "Maestra Sarah, you're not leaving, are you? You promised to teach me the Christmas song for my mama." Other children gathered around, their faces showing the particular panic of people who'd lost too much already. Sarah knelt down, gathering as many of them as she could into her arms. "Listen to me, all of you. Music doesn't disappear when the teacher goes away. It lives in here." She touched Diego's chest. "And here." She touched the little girl's forehead. "And whenever you play the songs I taught you, I'll be right there with you." "But we want you to stay," whispered a teenager named Carlos, who'd been too cool to show emotion until now. "I know, mi amor. But sometimes we have to choose between different kinds of love, and they're all real, and they all matter." Emma looked up at Sarah with 7-year-old wisdom. "Can't you love us all? Can't we make the family bigger instead of smaller?" The suggestion hung in the room like a prayer. Sarah looked at Michael, seeing in his eyes the same impossible hope she felt building in her chest. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. "I'm thinking—" Sarah's voice grew stronger as the idea took shape. "I'm thinking Austin needs a community music program. I'm thinking these children need someone who understands their journey. I'm thinking maybe love doesn't have to be a choice between this or that. Maybe it can be yes, and yes, and yes." Maria Santos smiled the kind of smile that had sustained her through 30 years of nonprofit work. "The Esperanza program is portable, you know. With the right funding, the right location, the right partners." "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Michael asked. "I'm saying that angels don't abandon the people who need them," Emma announced. "They just get bigger wings." 6 months later, the Austin Community Music Center opened its doors in a renovated warehouse in East Austin, its walls bright with murals painted by local artists and refugee children working together. Sarah stood in the main rehearsal room watching 30 kids from Honduras and 30 kids from Westlake Hills learn to make music together, their differences dissolving into harmony. Michael worked from an office upstairs. His new company, Tech Vision Community Partners, focused on creating educational software for nonprofits and underserved communities. The work paid less than his old corporate empire, but it paid in ways that mattered more. Emma played piano for the evening concert, her small fingers dancing through a piece she'd composed herself, a song about angels who collect broken hearts and turn them into music. When she finished, the audience erupted in applause, but Emma only had eyes for Sarah, who stood in the wings wiping away tears of pride. Later that evening, after the last student had been picked up and the last instrument put away, the three of them sat together on the center's front steps, watching the Austin skyline light up against the Texas darkness. "Are you happy?" Michael asked Sarah, the question he'd been afraid to voice for months. "I'm home," she replied, taking his hand in one of hers and Emma's in the other. "I'm finally home." Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed the hour, and Emma made a wish on the first star she could see. Some prayers, she'd learned, take their time coming true. But when they finally arrived, they're worth every tear, every night of missing someone, every moment of believing in impossible things. Love, it turned out, really could grow big enough to hold everyone who needed it. Dear friends, this story touches something deep within all of us who've lived long enough to understand that love isn't just about finding someone. It's about choosing to keep loving them through every storm life sends your way. Michael and Sarah's journey reminds us that at 55, 60, or beyond, we're not too old for second chances, for grand gestures, or for believing that broken hearts can still create beautiful music together. Whether you've lost a spouse, watched children leave the nest, or found yourself starting over when you thought your story was already written, their love proves that the best chapters might still be ahead of us. Sarah learned that running from pain only delays healing, while Michael discovered that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the courage to love again despite knowing it might hurt. Emma showed them both that children see love more clearly than adults, recognizing angels in broken people and family in chosen bonds. Their story whispers what many of us need to hear. You are never too damaged to deserve love, never too old to begin again, and never too broken to create something beautiful from the pieces. Sometimes the most profound healing happens when we stop protecting our hearts and start sharing them. What second chance at love or family have you been too afraid to pursue? How has choosing vulnerability over self-protection changed your life? Share your thoughts below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.